In the heart of the galaxy, the Galactic Empire's council chamber buzzed with the voices of leaders from 100 worlds. They were a sight to behold, each ruler clad in regalia adorned with symbols of their rank, their species' colors, or jewels from worlds they had conquered and enslaved. Their words blended in the space, a web of pride and power reinforced by their history of control. And yet, beneath the ritual and pomp, there was a shared disdain, a unified scorn directed toward a single species. Humanity, a mere whisper in their collective history, an inferior race that had only just begun to push its way into interstellar space. A race with little to no influence, from a small planet circling an unremarkable star. The council members sneered, glancing at each other as if to confirm the shared absurdity of what they were hearing. Reports had emerged, rumors of human ships massing on the fringes of imperial territory. Word had it that they were mobilizing, preparing for war. Laughter filled the chamber. War? Humanity, attempting to face them? Ridiculous. These were beings who had tamed worlds, developed technologies centuries beyond anything humanity could comprehend. The council saw humanity as children at best, primitives, with no understanding of the forces they were daring to challenge. At the head of the council, Emperor Tarkus raised a single hand, silencing the murmurs with an air of bored authority. He was a figure larger than life, towering over others with a physique bred for intimidation, his gleaming armor a symbol of Empire's power. Tarkus was notorious for his belief in the superiority of his race and, more broadly, the Empire as a whole. Humanity, in his eyes, was an irrelevant blip, an anomaly on the fringes of civilization. Is this truly what we've gathered to discuss? Children with toys, he scoffed, his voice dripping with derision. His advisors chuckled, nodding in agreement. To them, this was just another sign of humanity's ignorance, their delusion that they could ever pose a threat. But while the laughter echoed, an aide entered quietly, bearing a fresh report. The room stilled as the Emperor glanced at it. "Their fleet is larger than we expected," he muttered, though his tone remained dismissive. A few council members shifted in their seats, glancing at each other. Despite the smug smiles, a hint of doubt flickered across some faces. The Empire's rulers had always viewed themselves as unstoppable, an authority ordained by might and destiny. But the rumors suggested that humanity had come prepared, that their fleet wasn't a mere handful of ships. Some officials found it laughable that humans could pull together anything close to a proper military force. It was amusing to them, the notion of these Earthlings throwing themselves against the Empire's technological superiority. To them, this was not an act of courage, but an act of utter recklessness. Tarkus waved his hand again, closing the matter. "This ends in a footnote in our records," he declared, settling back into his chair with a smirk. "Dispatch a patrol. Let them see what happens when primitives dare to defy us." He dismissed the threat without another thought. Humanity's fate was sealed in their minds, already marked as a failed uprising. To the Empire, humanity was inconsequential, a nuisance soon to be crushed. But on the edge of the galaxy, far from the decadence and derision of the Empire, humanity was preparing in earnest. On board one of their command ships, the mood was starkly different. Here, the faces were set determined. Far from the Empire's sneers and laughter, humanity's leaders and military personnel moved with a grim purpose. They knew the scale of what they were attempting, understood the magnitude of the power arrayed against them. But they weren't delusional or naive. They were determined. Humanity had lived in the shadow of the Empire's reach for too long. Many of their colonies had suffered under its thumb. They'd watched as the Empire casually dominated other species, stripping planets of resources, treating lives as mere collateral in their endless pursuit of expansion. Some of humanity's colonies had faced the Empire's wrath firsthand, reduced to husks, with millions dead or enslaved. For too long, humanity had been forced to submit, to pay homage to this brutal regime. But no longer. Their fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had seen, built with an ingenuity and resolve born from their harsh reality. There was no arrogance here, only resolve, the knowledge that they had been pushed too far and were finally pushing back. Behind the scenes, humanity's best minds had poured everything into this effort. Engineers, scientists, soldiers, all knew that this was not just another fight. This was a battle for survival, for independence, for dignity. Humanity had few allies and limited resources, but they had ingenuity, grit, and a burning desire to be free. Their ships weren't equipped with the luxurious technology the Empire's forces flaunted, but they were designed with purpose, with adaptability. The human fleet was lean and powerful, its soldiers a mix of hardened veterans and young recruits who had been waiting their entire lives for a chance to make a difference. They knew they would be outgunned, outnumbered, but not outwitted. Humanity's leaders understood they would be seen as fools, a small species aiming to challenge an empire. But they would show the galaxy that they were anything but insignificant. In one of the command rooms, Admiral Kepler watched as his officers and strategists moved into position. Each knew the stakes, understood the slim odds. He could see the mixture of determination and fear in their eyes. The fear wasn't of failure, but of what failure would mean for every man, woman, and child under their protection. They couldn't afford defeat. This was their last, desperate shot at reclaiming their future. Somewhere, on a different ship, a young officer adjusted her console, listening as the orders filtered through. This wasn't just about fighting a fleet. This was a message to the Empire that humanity would no longer be subjugated. They would fight, and they would make every shot count. They were a force to be reckoned with, united by a singular cause and unbreakable spirit. In the hours before departure, every corner of humanity's vast interstellar fleet buzzed with focused energy. Soldiers stood at attention. Engineers worked tirelessly to check every system, and scientists in labs on Earth and aboard the ships ran final simulations. Each person was acutely aware of the impossible odds they faced, but no one wavered. They'd spent months preparing for this, and each of them understood the weight of this moment. They were heading into the jaws of the galaxy's most powerful empire, but they wouldn't face it unprepared. Unlike the Empire's vast, standardized fleets, humanity's forces had been crafted, ship by ship, to work together in unexpected ways, drawing on their greatest strengths, creativity and adaptability. Humanity's ace in the hole was the fruit of years of relentless research and the determination to level a field that seemed impossibly stacked against them. They'd developed a technology the Empire would never expect from a lesser species, the Void Shield. These shields were the product of late, harrowing nights and trials marked by disastrous failures and breakthroughs. It was a stealth technology unlike anything the Empire had ever seen, allowing their ships to disappear into the darkness of space. When active, the Void Shields absorbed all detectable energy signatures, hiding every human ship from sight until they were nearly on top of the enemy. In a galaxy where empires had grown reliant on overwhelming power and brute force, this level of stealth was unheard of. But the Void Shield wasn't their only advantage. Years of being the underdog had made humanity proficient in guerrilla warfare, adapting their fleet for a style of combat that was fast, unpredictable, and lethal. Unlike the Empire's massive dreadnoughts, humanity's ships were agile, built to dodge and outmaneuver the Empire's slower, bulkier crafts. Their smaller fighters, combined with the Void Shield technology, could strike quickly and vanish before the Empire's ships could even return fire. Tactics were drilled into the crew every day. They were taught to exploit chaos and speed, disrupting the enemy's rigid formations. Every soldier knew that in this war, survival depended on their ability to adapt to any situation on a moment's notice. Admiral Kepler, standing on the bridge of his flagship, scanned the faces of his crew. They were veterans and newcomers, each one a portrait of resolve. He knew they trained hard, but the unspoken reality weighed heavily on them. Each soldier had chosen to face overwhelming odds, knowing that the Empire's forces were technologically superior. For some, this was personal. Loved ones lost to Empire raids on outlying human colonies, families torn apart by forced conscription or imperial justice. Others simply refused to live in fear any longer. To them, it was time to face the Empire head-on, no matter the cost. Engineers continued their rounds, inspecting the reactors that powered the void shields. It was risky technology, still relatively untested in battle, and they knew it. Each engineer was prepared for a grueling conflict, and there were rumors of backup shields in case the primary systems failed. They'd accepted the risks, knowing that their contributions might mean the difference between success and annihilation. On board one of the smaller assault ships, a young lieutenant prepped her squad for battle. She didn't hide the realities of what they would face, but she encouraged them to remember why they were there. Each of her soldiers carried a memento, a photo, a locket, a worn badge, something to remind them of the people they were fighting for. Their determination hardened as they ran through final preparations. They trained with precision, and every maneuver was ingrained in muscle memory. Some had barely known peace in their lives, growing up on the edges of imperial space, and now they'd been given a chance to fight back. The thought of going down in history as part of the first human fleet to challenge the Empire fueled their resolve. There was no place for hesitation. As the final checks wrapped up, commanders moved through the ranks, giving last-minute orders and words of encouragement. Humanity's fleet was prepared, but this was no ordinary battle. They were well aware of the gravity of the mission. Some tried to disguise their apprehension with jokes, sharing stories of home and the lives they'd led before joining the fight. The laughter was quiet, but it was real, each of them finding strength in their comrades and the mission that lay ahead. As the fleet assembled, the scale of what humanity had accomplished became clear. Hundreds of ships, each sleek and nimble, bristling with experimental weaponry, moved into formation. Their unity stood in stark contrast to the Empire's monolithic arrogance. These weren't just soldiers or scientists. They were fighters who had taken on this battle by choice, with full awareness of what they were up against. In their minds, they were not merely defending their species. They were fighting for the right to exist, to live free of tyranny. The command staff signaled readiness, and in a final address, Admiral Kepler's voice echoed through the fleet's comms. He reminded them that the Empire underestimated them, that the Empire believed this fleet was destined for failure. But Kepler spoke of humanity's resilience, their endless drive to survive, and their unyielding spirit. He called them to make the Empire realize that this was no fleeting rebellion. This was the birth of a power that would fight for justice in a galaxy that had long forgotten the concept. They would defy the Empire and fight with everything they had, for themselves and the generations that would follow. With his words still ringing in their ears, the fleet's engines roared to life. The void shields activated, blanketing the Armada in a cloak of invisibility. The Empire would have no warning, no inkling of their approach until the battle had already begun. Adrenaline coursed through every crew member, a rush of fear and excitement as they moved forward into the unknown. As Earth receded behind them, each ship and crew member carried with them the dreams and hopes of billions. They were a people who had refused to give up, who had harnessed the strength of their collective determination to create something unprecedented. Every calculation had been checked, every maneuver rehearsed, but they knew that nothing could fully prepare them for what lay ahead. Still, they pressed on undaunted, ready to face the Empire and prove that humanity was not only prepared to survive, they were ready to fight for their place in the galaxy. The fleet disappeared into the void, a silent, unseen force making its way to the heart of the Empire, carrying with it the fierce hope of freedom. The emptiness of deep space felt ominous, an expanse broken only by the small yet resolute silhouettes of humanity's fleet. They advanced in formation, hidden from all sensors by the void shields that shimmered faintly before blending completely into the blackness. Ahead, scattered like specks of light, lay an Empire patrol fleet, a vanguard of the vast military machine that had spent centuries crushing resistance. The Imperial commanders aboard the patrol ships saw the human fleet first as blips on their scanners, at first registering only as a minor disturbance on the edges of their charts. Confident in their superiority, they chuckled among themselves, dismissing the approaching force as yet another demonstration of humanity's foolhardiness. The Empire's patrol captain, a tall, stoic figure clad in the polished armor of his rank, watched his screens with bored detachment. "Scanners are picking up a few ships approaching at high speed," his subordinate reported, smirking. "Another blip in the data? Humanity, most likely. It's hard to tell whether to pity them or laugh at their persistence." With a wave, the captain signaled his officers to prepare for a routine annihilation. As far as he was concerned, this was a minor inconvenience, nothing worth concern or even close observation. Their ships moved into formation, blocking what they assumed was a predictable, head-on assault. Then, humanity struck. The first wave of human ships shot forward, appearing out of nowhere as the void shields dropped to unleash a rain of firepower on the unprepared patrol ships. Laser blasts and missile fire tore through the Empire's vessels before they even realized they were under attack. The Empire's captains scrambled to respond, caught off guard by the ferocity and precision of humanity's opening assault. From his command chair, the Empire's patrol captain watched in disbelief as two of his frigates erupted into fiery debris, consumed before they could even return fire. "What in the void?" he stammered, his composure cracking as he registered the scene. This wasn't supposed to happen. Humanity was supposed to be predictable, straightforward, a minor nuisance. Instead, his fleet was under siege by agile ships that moved with breathtaking speed and coordination, vanishing and reappearing seemingly at will. Humanity was everywhere at once, slipping past their defenses with uncanny agility. Every time an Imperial ship tried to lock on, a human fighter darted out of range, reappearing moments later to attack from an unpredictable angle. As the battle raged on, it became clear that this was no fluke, no random strike. Humanity's fleet was leveraging the stealth of their void shields and precise, guerrilla-style tactics, weaving through the Empire's bulky formations with ease. The Empire's lumbering dreadnoughts were accustomed to fighting through sheer firepower, relying on their armor and intimidating size. But humanity's small, maneuverable ships exposed the Empire's weakness. They could not match this agility or anticipate this fluid style of combat. The Empire had trained for centuries in overwhelming force, not cunning, and certainly not against an enemy that fought with such ingenuity. Commands flew between the Empire's ships as the captains tried desperately to respond, but their efforts were disjointed. Humanity's fleet was an embodiment of adaptability, responding to every countermaneuver with an attack pattern the Empire had never seen. As the Imperial formation weakened, the patrol captain's frustration gave way to panic. His ships were taking hits they couldn't evade. Systems failed, hulls cracked, and explosions tore through the darkness as the once confident patrol fleet found itself overwhelmed. One of the Empire's destroyer captains finally managed to get a shot off, landing a solid hit on one of the human vessels, which exploded in a blaze of fire. Yet, the victory was hollow. For every human ship they managed to destroy, two more took its place, darting in and out like phantoms, inflicting damage before vanishing into the void. The patrol fleet was dwindling fast, and for the first time, the Empire's commanders understood that humanity was more than a minor nuisance. These were not desperate amateurs, but soldiers who had come prepared for war. The Imperial patrol captain, his tone no longer smug but shaken, ordered his remaining ships into a defensive formation. "Regroup, focus fire on anything that moves in the shadows," he barked, his face pale. They'd never expected humanity to push them to this point, and they were struggling to adapt to tactics that defied everything they'd been taught. In their arrogance, the Empire had overlooked the value of speed and adaptability, treating raw power as the ultimate tool. Now they were paying for that oversight. Humanity's fleet seized the advantage, pressing their attack with relentless resolve. They coordinated like clockwork, launching precise strikes that severed supply lines and isolated individual Empire ships from their formation. Imperial officers could only watch as, one by one, their fellow ships were torn apart. They had never encountered an enemy so determined, so ruthlessly efficient. By the time they realized the true scope of the threat, it was already too late. Humanity's commanders moved swiftly to exploit every opening, executing each strike with a mixture of courage and tactical genius that left the Empire's once arrogant captains scrambling. The battle was not without cost, however. Humanity's ships took losses as well, with crews who'd trained for months or years together perishing in explosions that lit the dark void. Each ship that fell was a painful reminder of the risks they faced, and humanity's commanders felt the weight of every life lost. For all their cunning and adaptability, they couldn't escape the fact that the Empire's weaponry still vastly outmatched their own. The void shields, for all their stealth, couldn't protect indefinitely against the Empire's relentless counterattacks. Each loss reminded them of the stakes of this conflict, a reminder they would carry into every engagement. As the last of the Imperial patrol ships exploded in a violent burst, humanity's fleet regrouped, assessing their damage and gathering the wreckage of their fallen allies. They had achieved a narrow victory, one that came with a sobering cost. The commanders knew that as far as the Empire was concerned, this battle would be no isolated incident. The Empire now understood humanity's capability, and they would not make the mistake of underestimating them again. This skirmish, a warning shot, would likely prompt the Empire to summon its full strength. Word of the defeat would travel quickly. Back on his command ship, Admiral Kepler received the report of their success with both pride and apprehension. They had won, yes, but at a cost, and it would only escalate from here. He knew that this was just the beginning, a single engagement that would be followed by countless others, each one testing the limits of their fleet and their technology. He ordered the crew to honor the fallen, but reminded them that their fight was far from over. Each sacrifice was a tribute to humanity's spirit, but every victory would require them to push even harder. Across the galaxy, in the heart of the Empire, word of the patrol fleet's destruction hit the Imperial Council like a shockwave. The Empire's leaders, gathered in their opulent chambers, looked at each other with expressions of confusion and anger. None of them could comprehend how humanity, primitive, undeveloped humanity, had managed to defeat one of their patrol fleets. It was inconceivable, a blight on their pride. Quickly, orders were given to escalate their response, and strategies were discussed to prevent such a debacle from happening again. They had been humiliated by this minor species, and they would see to it that humanity was made to pay. As humanity's fleet moved forward, its crews refocused, prepared to face the full wrath of an empire that now recognized them as a genuine threat. As the smoke from the first encounter cleared, humanity's fleet knew that they'd done more than win a battle. They'd sent shockwaves through the entire empire. But the empire's response was swift and brutal. Within days, humanity's sensors picked up a massive imperial fleet, heading straight toward them with a single purpose: annihilation. The empire would not suffer the indignity of defeat. They mobilized a force larger than humanity had ever imagined, each ship loaded with the firepower to turn entire planets into debris. It was a message from the empire, cold and clear. Humanity's defiance would be punished with overwhelming force. Humanity's leaders gathered to face the coming storm, reading every report, analyzing every scrap of intelligence on the Empire's incoming armada. There was no mistaking the scale of this threat, but they were undeterred. This was what they had prepared for, what they'd all signed up to face. From the newest recruit to the seasoned veteran, Every member of humanity's fleet knew what was at stake. They were not just defending ships. They were defending the right to exist, to carve out a future free from fear. As the Empire's armada approached, humanity's commanders set their plan into motion. They couldn't match the Empire ship for ship, but they could use every scrap of ingenuity and every ounce of will to even the odds. The void shields powered up once more, hiding their position and allowing them to get in close without alerting the Empire's massive ships. They scattered their fleet in unpredictable formations, making it nearly impossible for the Empire to track them. Every tactical advantage was put to use as they prepared to fight against the sheer might of an empire that spanned countless star systems. The battle began in a flash of fire and metal. Humanity's ships, cloaked until the last possible second, emerged from the darkness, catching the Empire's fleet off guard. From all directions, human fighters darted in like phantoms, striking weak points in the Empire's formation. They targeted engines, power cores, and critical control centers, hitting hard and then vanishing before the Empire could lock onto them. The Empire's commanders tried to adapt, giving orders to regroup and focus fire. But humanity's fleet was relentless. They pressed every advantage, never letting the Empire's forces stabilize. In the heart of the chaos, acts of heroism lit up the darkness. Crews risked their lives, pushing their ships beyond limits, diving through enemy fire to protect their comrades. In one frigate, a young lieutenant took control of a damaged gunship, piloting it into the line of fire to cover a crippled ally. She knew the risks but didn't hesitate. Her sacrifice kept her squad safe, allowing them to regroup and counterattack. Elsewhere, an engineer who'd stayed behind on Earth to monitor the fleet's void shields made a desperate decision, diverting all available power to keep the shields operational even though it meant overloading his systems. He watched the screens as his equipment crackled and sparked, holding on until his final breath to protect those out in the field. Despite their unity and courage, humanity faced losses with every passing moment. The Empire's ships were relentless, pushing back with every bit of their formidable arsenal. Empire commanders, sensing weakness in humanity's scattered formations, ordered an all-out assault, aiming to obliterate the smaller, less shielded ships first. For the Empire, this wasn't just a battle. It was an assertion of their dominance. Their fleet fired without mercy, destroying dozens of human vessels in rapid succession. Each explosion a brutal reminder of the Empire's power. But for every ship lost, humanity's spirit seemed only to grow stronger. Each fallen ally was avenged with a vengeance that rattled the Empire's ranks. Humanity's tactics had been bold and unpredictable, but the Empire's response was starting to adapt. The Imperial commanders, after suffering heavy losses in the first wave, began organizing tighter formations, fortifying their defenses. The Empire's arrogance, once unshakable, now gave way to a mix of desperation and determination. They threw more ships into the battle, hoping to overwhelm humanity by sheer numbers. But no matter how many ships they sent, humanity met them with unyielding resistance, unwilling to give even an inch. From the bridge of his command ship, Admiral Kepler monitored the battlefield, his heart heavy with the cost of each tactical decision. He saw the faces of those who fought, who sacrificed everything for the freedom they'd always dreamed of. His voice, calm yet resolute, echoed through the fleet's channels, a steady reminder that they were in this together. He reminded them of the people they protected, the futures they fought for, and the dream of peace that kept them going. Every time one of their own fell, the resolve within his fleet only strengthened, and they pushed forward, defying odds that would have crushed lesser beings. But the Empire was adapting fast. As humanity's numbers dwindled, their remaining ships were pushed to their limits. Human crews worked frantically, making field repairs, rerouting power, and rationing resources, knowing that every second bought them another chance to strike back. Amid the fray, humanity's tactics grew even more unconventional. Ships broke away from traditional formations, splitting off to confuse the Empire's targeting systems. Guerrilla warfare tactics emerged, with smaller craft weaving through the larger Empire ships, slipping between hulls and finding vulnerable spots to exploit. The Empire, rattled by the sheer audacity of humanity's maneuvers, began to feel the first true pangs of fear. The reports filtering through their ranks were unsettling. Humanity wasn't giving up. The Empire had anticipated a swift defeat, a scattering of resistance, but instead, they were faced with a force that fought like nothing they'd ever encountered. They were not just battling ships and soldiers. They were facing an entire species driven by the desire for freedom, for dignity, for survival. Amid the chaos, moments of silence echoed through humanity's comms. Each time a ship went dark, each time an ally was lost, the silence settled like a heavy weight. But these moments were fleeting, replaced by the renewed determination of those who remained. For every crew member who fell, others rose to take their place, their spirits intertwined with the memory of the fallen. It was a kind of strength that the Empire could never understand, a strength born not of domination, but of unity and resilience. The battle dragged on, each side pushing itself to the brink. Humanity's ships were running low on power and ammunition, their void shields flickering as systems strained to stay operational. The Empire pressed forward, sensing victory within reach, yet never quite achieving it. Even as humanity's fleet dwindled, their defiance burned brighter, a beacon of resistance that left the Empire shaken and unsure. As the Empire launched a final, overwhelming wave, humanity's ships found themselves facing the full might of the Empire, outnumbered and outgunned on all fronts. The scene was grim, each ship battered, each crew exhausted. They knew that survival was uncertain, yet none among them considered surrender. They had come too far, sacrificed too much, to turn back now. Just as the Empire's armada closed in, the communications filled with the collective voices of humanity's fleet, a signal of defiance, a final rallying call. As the fleet braced for the worst, the Empire's captains stared in silence, stunned by the sight of humanity's battered fleet refusing to break. The fate of humanity's fleet hung in the balance, a question mark against the Empire's might. As humanity's fleet drifted in the aftermath of the last battle, battered but unbroken, their leaders gathered to prepare for the final stand. They were out of time, out of supplies, and their numbers had dwindled to a fraction of what they'd begun with. This was it, the last opportunity to either make their mark or be crushed beneath the Empire's boot. Every human in the fleet knew what was at stake. Communications opened across the fleet, and Admiral Kepler's voice echoed with a quiet, steady strength that reached every corner of the fleet. For centuries, we've been told that we don't matter, that our lives mean less than nothing, he said. We've faced the Empire's cruelty, felt their power firsthand, and yet here we stand. Today, we're not fighting just for survival, but for the right to live on our own terms. Every ship here, every life on this fleet, carries the hopes of those who came before and those who will come after. So let's show them who we are. As the speech ended, a resolute silence fell over the fleet, each soldier, pilot, and technician absorbing the weight of those words. They steeled themselves for the coming onslaught. The Empire's response was swift. They had been rattled by humanity's resilience and now deployed the full might of their military. Elite squadrons, experimental weaponry, and the most formidable ships in their armada all moved in a unified assault, bearing down on humanity's fleet like an unstoppable tidal wave. The Empire would crush this uprising at all costs, driven by a desperation born of fear and pride. Humanity's fleet prepared itself as the enemy closed in. They had no choice but to dig deep, to use every tactic, every maneuver they'd mastered. They moved their remaining forces into a layered formation, strategically placing their last ships to exploit the Empire's predictable reliance on brute force. As the first shots rang out, the battle erupted in a chaotic storm of fire, energy beams, and explosions that lit up the dark void of space. Human ships weaved in and out, dancing between Empire dreadnoughts, pulling off improbable maneuvers that left the Empire's forces struggling to keep up. But humanity wasn't just holding their ground. They were watching, waiting for the moment to strike. In the heart of the Empire's fleet, humanity's tactical minds had identified a crucial vulnerability in the Empire's formation, a weak point where their command ships were clustered, heavily guarded, but susceptible to a calculated strike. The Empire's arrogance had been its downfall. Its commanders had grown accustomed to overwhelming force, to never worrying about protecting their own weak spots. Humanity, with everything to lose, saw that weakness and seized the opportunity. Admiral Kepler gave the order, and humanity's fleet surged forward, a single, calculated thrust toward the command ships. They fought with everything they had, exploiting their void shields to slip through the cracks in the Empire's defenses, hitting with pinpoint accuracy. The Empire's commanders scrambled to respond, sending in their elite squadrons to intercept. But humanity's ships pushed through, cutting a line straight to the Empire's heart. In the chaos, humanity's secret weapon, a highly experimental EMP generator built to overload even the most advanced shielding, activated. It unleashed a wave of energy that spread through the heart of the Empire's fleet, short-circuiting their communications and rendering their defensive systems useless. Empire ships floundered, shields failing and engines stalling, as humanity's fleet pressed the attack with relentless precision. It was a moment of sheer, hard-won advantage that humanity would not waste. In the confusion, humanity's fighters descended on the command ships, taking them out one by one. Massive Empire dreadnoughts, once symbols of unbreakable power, were left vulnerable, their hulls torn open, systems shutting down in a wave of cascading failures. The tide had turned, and the Empire's fleet began to crumble. Human ships maneuvered through the wreckage, surgically dismantling the remaining Empire forces as they struggled to regroup. Command after command went unanswered on the Empire's channels, their leaders realizing, too late, that their own overconfidence had cost them everything. The Empire's final line of defense collapsed, leaving its fleet in ruins. Stunned, the remaining Empire commanders ordered a full retreat. They had never anticipated that this lesser species could fight with such ferocity, could exploit the Empire's own weaknesses with such precision. The arrogance they had once held, the confidence in their own invincibility, shattered in the face of humanity's relentless spirit. As the battle wound down, humanity's ships regrouped, the surviving crews cheering, embracing, and mourning the fallen in equal measure. They had faced an empire, an entity that had spanned galaxies, that had crushed countless worlds beneath its heel, and they had triumphed. The cost had been staggering, and yet the victory was undeniable. Humanity had defied every expectation, turning their defiance into a victory that would echo across the stars. Across the galaxy, news of the Empire's defeat spread like wildfire. For those who had long endured the Empire's oppression, it was a moment of awakening. Other species, once cowed into submission, began to question, to wonder if perhaps they too could rise. The myth of the Empire's invulnerability had been broken, and humanity's victory became a beacon of hope, a reminder that even the smallest spark could ignite a flame capable of toppling giants. As the last remnants of the Empire's fleet limped away, humanity took a moment to honor their own. They mourned those who had given their lives, each name remembered, each sacrifice cherished. They had lost friends, allies, family, but in their loss, they had gained something far greater: the freedom to forge their own path, the right to live on their own terms. Humanity's victory was not just a military one. It was a triumph of spirit over oppression, of hope over fear.